Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Caithness Amateur Dram Antique Society tasting. And tonight I'm going to do a Kilkerran tasting of four of the releases over the last 12 months or so. So we've got a Kilkerran 16-year-old, 46%, Kilkerran 8-year-old cask strength sherry cask matured, 57.4%. And then we've got the two releases they did last year for the Kilkerran heavily peated batch 10, 57.8%, and batch 11, 57.9%. So Kilkerran, Glengyle Distillery. In 1872, William Mitchell founded Glengyle Distillery and built it 1 year later. The Mitchell brothers were the uncrowned whisky kings of Campbelltown. John and his son Alexander ran Springbank Distillery just a few metres away from Glengyle. If you ever go to Campbelltown, you know that Springbank is just off the main street. Down off the main street, then you turn left and you come across the iconic distillery. And Glengyle is on the other side of the main street, down a lane, and you come to Glengyle. So William at first had a share in Springbank, but was dropped after an argument with his brother. Other Mitchell brothers ran Reichlachen Distillery next to Glengyle, but recession also came to Campbelltown, and one of the more than 25 distilleries that have been active during the town's heydays, one after the other, had to close. In 1919, Mitchell sold Glengyle to West Highland Malt Distilleries Limited, who in turn sold everything again for £300 in 1924, before Glengyle was finally closed for good in 1925. The remaining whisky stocks were auctioned on April 8th of the same year. In 1940, the Bloch, B-L-O-C-H, brothers tried to reopen the distillery, but failed, not least due to the unstoppable economic situation during World War II. In 1957, Campbell Henderson made a new attempt, but didn't get beyond applying for the licence. From the 1970s on, the buildings were used as warehouses and sales offices of Kintyre Farmers Cooperation. However, they'd been vacant for several years when Hedley Wright, a descendant of William Mitchell and the owner of Springbank Distillery, bought the Glengyle buildings in November 2000. He started renovations and re-equipped them, partially with used equipment from other distilleries. Mitchell's Glengyle Distillery reopened in 2004, and on March 25th, 2004, the first Kilkerran new make was distilled. It doesn't really operate anywhere near its full capacity of 170,000 litres. They're aiming for a production somewhere to 30 to 50,000 litres, I suspect. The old malting floors of Glengyle Distillery have not been recommissioned yet. Until that day, Kilkerran malt is provided by the sister distillery, Springbank. There, the barley is steeped in water from Crosshill Loch and then spread on Springbank's malting floor for 5 to 7 days to start the germination process. It's turned over every 4 hours, and after that the malt is dried over peat fire for 6 hours and over a hot air from the gas oven for 30 hours, and that leaves the malt with a phenol content of 12 to 15 parts per million. It's then transported to Glengyle Distillery and milled in a bobby mill, which was a present from Craigellachie Distillery, which had purchased a new mill. Mashing takes place in a semi-louter mash tun manufactured by Forsyth of Rothes. If you ever visit Springbank Distillery, the equipment there is from the 1940s, and apparently it was so good that the company that installed and fitted that equipment for Springbank Distillery in the 1940s had to do so little repair work that they actually went broke. During mashing at Glengow, which takes 7 to 8 hours, in each run 4 tons of grist are washed out with hot water 3 times. The resulting wort is then brought to fermentation in the 4 washbacks made of larch wood with the help of yeast. The containers each have a capacity of 30,000 litres, but are only filled with 25,000 litres of wort to leave enough space for active expanding liquid. Then after 70 to 110 hours, the beer with an alcohol content of 5% ABV is ready. And Glengow website makes it clear that there would be room for additional washbacks. Glengow took over the distillation equipment from Ben Wyvis Distillery. The wash still holds 18,000 litres, while the spirit still holds 15,000 litres. The latter, the spirit still used to be a wash still, but was converted at Glengow Distillery. The first distillation run results in 21 to 23% ABV, while the heart of the second distillation run is collected in the spirit receiver with 68% ABV. The casks are then filled with new make that was diluted to 63.5% ABV with water from Cross Hill Loch. The casks are weighed before and after filling in order to measure the exact amount of alcohol filled in. Glengow uses mainly bourbon and sherry casks, but occasionally also port, Madeira or rum casks. When the casks have been filled and labelled, they are transported by tractors to the warehouses of Springbank Distillery. There are 6 traditional earthen floor dunnage warehouses in which the casks are only stored 3 rows high, but also 2 racked warehouses with steel racks that house 7 rows of casks. So Kilkerran whisky, produced at Glengow Distillery is marketed as Kilkerran, since the name rights to Glengow belong to Loch Lomond distillers, who released a blended whisky under the Glengow name. The name Kilkerran is derived from the name of the early Christian settlement, St. Kilkerran, on whose site Campbelltown was built. The first release of Kilkerran single malt was a 3-year-old in 2007. And then starting in 2009, the distillery each year released a new Kilkerran work in progress. And you will see a video that had previously done on Kilkerran work in progresses, with each batch being 1 year older than the previous one. That was until Kilkerran presented the 12-year-old as the new standard product in 2016. So Kilkerran malt is slightly smoky. The 12-year-old was batched from 70% bourbon cask and 30% sherry casks. And besides its peaty character, it features fruity lemon notes, vanilla, honey, butterscotch and notes of malt. So tonight we're going to start off with the Kilkerran 16-year-old, bottled at 46% ABV. There are older expressions from Glengow Distillery, but they're a bit like hen's teeth, like all Springbank Glengow releases. And depending on where you are in the world, this is their oldest core range, and it may be just as difficult to acquire. and you may be asked to pay far too much for it. This one from 2024 has been matured in 70% bourbon, 20% sherry, and 10% rum. 46% ABV, which is standard for Springbank Glengyle for their core releases. Non-chill filtered, natural colour. Let's see what we have here. This is a light copper colour. Nice tears in it, beautiful tears in this. Let's see what we have in the nose. And it's lovely and fresh. A little floral. And it's definitely a little coastal, but also tropical. And that tropical fruit nose is beautiful. I think, you know, tropical fruits, pineapple, lychee, and starfruit. And in the background, you've got that floral look, a bit like lilies and Turkish delight. Very sweet too. You get that Scottish tablet, the sweet sort of harder than fudge delicacy that Scotland specialises in: condensed milk, sugar, and cream. A little bread pudding, salt, and a wisp of the damp dummage that we associate with Campbelltown. Pineapple, Morello cherries. Now this is about 12 to 15, and you do get a very soft peat smoke on this. Very nice. It's quite light though as well. Very elegant. We'll try the mouth. And you do get the Campbelltown funk, but it's very, very delicate. All that lightness and brightness from the nose comes, but it's got a rich, leathery depth coming from the sherry and the rum. And the tropical fruit, where you get crisp orchard fruits, and then the tropical. And the saltiness is very light. And you get the sweetness from the rum cask. It's creamy. It's a beautiful balance, this mango papaya with golden syrup, and you get a touch of coconut, dried up apricots, and a creamy vanilla note. It's 70% bourbon cask, this after all. And the finish, you get more of that dunnage note, which expresses the maturity of 16 years. But that fades to salt, soft white pepper, and very soft smoke on the finish. Peppery mineral and a touch of that old tunes, the cherry menthols used to soothe your throat. I'm going to try about 1.5 ml, so 10. I added 10 drops of water to this. Being a bit more generous with water these days. Although you can never take it out, so be careful. And there is definitely a haze there. And now you get the fruit, fresh fruit, and more of the maritime note. Grapefruit, quince jelly, rosehip, and fresh cut flowers, and a salty sea spray. And you get the medicine oil, machine oil rather, and the tart scent of the North Sea. Vanilla, and it's like a fresh cake base. Well, it sparkles a little. There's a woody dryness. You still get some fruit, salt and pepper, a little marjoram, vanilla, honey, fudge. It's almost like a bitterness, like a Guinness type bitterness there. I think this one's better neat on the palate. And it's a, with water, it's a medium length finish. Very mature. Molasses, smoked pineapple and pear. So, for the first one here, the Kilkerran16 YO 46%. Well, it's simply Kilkerran. It's a beautiful whiskey. You know, if you put it against bolder whiskies, it's not a very bold whiskey, this one. If you put it against bolder whiskies, yeah, you may find that this doesn't stand out because it's quite subtle. But on its own, as a first drink tonight, it's lovely. And for a core range release, it's superb. Very enjoyable. The rum is perceptible, and it creates a very satisfying and complex profile. And you know, it's available, and that's really something for a Springbank or a Kilkerran. So I'm going to cleanse my palate with a Nairn's Oka. And now we're moving on to, these are all samples. I found that Springbank whiskey to buy full bottles that you haven't tasted at the cost. I mean, the Kilkerrans are not terribly expensive when they're released, but you know, the add-on value to these is frightening. So I get samples from being a member of the Springbank Society. I get first dibs on Campbelltown and on Springbank and Glengyle releases, and I'm also a member of Cadenhead's Club, so I get some first dibs on samples as well. Worth joining. Cadenhead's is £75. The Springbank Society at the moment is closed to new members. Worth asking though. So this is an 8-year-old cask strength, and this one's been fully matured in Oloroso sherry casks and bottled at 57.4%. So I think this is the only release of the Kilkerran 8-year-old cask strength this year or last year. Again, it's more readily available, so hopefully that's something. Let's see where we are with this. It's darker than the 16-year-old, 100% Oloroso, of course. And let's see, it's got some nice tears there. Not as big a tear as the 16-year-old, I would say, tears. They're nice though, a bit thinner. I'd say this one's a deeper copper colour. And with this one, you get notes of soft peat smoke. Struck match there. Leather bound books and a sort of sticky toffee pudding. It's a little fishy and there's an oily scent. And there's a sweetness there, mixed with a greasy, smoky sense. So that Campbelltown funk again. Definitely leathery. And although this one's 100% Oloroso, it's like a rum soaked raisins. But there's maritime notes aplenty in this. This is maritime and smoky. Coal gases. And there's a touch of lime, key lime pie. There are sherry tones there, caramelised nuts. And it's 57.4%, but the alcohol is beautifully integrated. And I like peat smoke in the background. And there's a touch of citrus. And the longer you stay with cherry cola, toffee, touch of ash. I've started having porridge again since the snow started, and there's a touch of the cooked porridge there. And there's wet earth there as well. But you know, when you dig deep, you do get some of that freshly picked strawberries, the burnt brown sugar, and those Cadbury fudge fingers, and the Campbelltown funk there as well. Let's see where we go with the mouth. You do get the hit of the rather high ABV, but it's still very drinkable. It's got an incredible depth and a beautiful mouthfeel, this whiskey. A mix of floral fruitiness with toffee, thick date syrup, black currants, cherries, red currants, and that sort of maritime coastal taste. And you get the funk. Cucumber, goulash, and elderflower. A sort of meaty, full taste. Caramel, tobacco, sour cherries, raspberries, cracked black pepper, all complemented by a pleasant background of dirt and cigar ash. It's not overly spicy, but there's a noticeable and pleasant warmth from the alcohol, and the mouthfeel is good. It's nice. It's quite dry, but then it is 100% Oloroso. And the finish is a decent length. The red fruits linger along with the ash. Meaty, fishy, sort of disappears a bit, the savoury notes. And you get red apples, sour red apples, honey, and you get the wood and some chocolate, like a nuttiness. And you get some lavender, the floral notes again. And there's smoke, but it's very faint and it's almost hidden. And as the whiskey develops, you get a sort of ashy, medicinal smoke. and ginger and chocolate oranges. I'm going to try about 1 ml in this as well. So let's see. And you know, if water intensifies the gameltown funk and a medicinal note appears, it's somewhat like the aroma of a Lafroig, and it transitions from a sweet to a more savoury note. You get cashew nuts and almonds. And the water adds fruitiness and sweetness, which sort of mirrors what happened in the nose. But it may be less sweetness and slightly more bitterness. You get a prominent tobacco note, and it does lean more towards the savoury. And it's also a touch spicier. And now the spice on the finish is outlasting the other notes on the medium length finish. The mouthfeel is still good, but I think I'd skip water on this one, even though it's 57.4%. So, Kilkerran 8-year-old Cask strength 2024, 57.4%. And well, I did expect it to be good, and I can confirm that it delivers that. But I think it falls short from some of the absolute cracking Kilkerran releases I've seen over the past few years. So we're moving on to the peak monsters now. About 45 parts per million for the Kilkerran Heavy Peated. So I think with the Heavy Peated, what I think happens after doing a tour of Springbank Distillery a few years back, is that the Springbank boys go into Glengoyne and do a heavily peated distillation for a couple of weeks every year. I think that's what happens. And last year there were two, Kilkerran Heavily Peated Batch 10 and Kilkerran Heavily Peated Batch 11. We're going to try them both now. The first one is the Heavily Peated Batch 10 at 57.8%. And no need statement. So this is the 10th batch, and it's matured in 90% bourbon and 10% sherry cask, and bottled at 57.8% ABV. So it's quite pale straw coloured, this whiskey. Again, finished tears. And you know, the initial impression is a perfect harmony between the peated malt and the cask. And that's reflected roughly in what you're getting on the nose. The cask proportions of 90% bourbon, 10% sherry, and the 45 per part per million. It's got a sweet introduction on the nose. And there's a leafy green note of kelp. And there's plenty of creamy vanilla from the ex-bourbon. And you get, from the sherry, you get the dried fruit notes. Sultanas. And you get the spiciness, the Asian 5 spice, or even Thai 7 spice. And coriander, so there's a slight floral herby note there again. But it's all balanced by the peat smoke and the oakiness from the bourbon barrels. And you get the icing sugar, the creme brulee, and the custard. And sweet smoke, salted butter. And you get the forest flower, the sugar syrup, and the red forest berries, and the lemon peel. Walnuts. So there's nuttiness there from the sherry cask. Cooked apples. And you get the bum claw. Sweet peat. Honey and tin peaches. Plenty of vanilla, cheesecake. And you get the olive oil and the sea spray. Try them out. It's quite tingly. 57.8. And it's quite tart. But that transitions into a sweeter, creamier note, which is paired with a meaty, malty character. But then that all goes back to that astringent maritime Campbelltown funk. It's quite challenging. There's tannic oak, which is, you feel it desiccating the tongue. And there's only wisps of citric fruit poking through now and again. The peat smoke is soft and sweet, toasted marshmallows, which is typical of Kilkerran, heavily peated. Hints of gooseberries and Parma violets, developing over time. Delicate, sweet, vanilla, walnuts, lots of smoke. There's notes of cardboard. It's quite drying and ashy. Touch of licorice root. And you get charred lemon peel. And the sweetness lingers on the finish. It's a long, smoky, very sweet, with a very mild aftertaste of oak notes and orange peel. More wood smoke and lemon. It's got a nice salinity. Peat finds its most self-assured expression as a smoky heat, which expands to coat the tongue and the throat. The wood is has almost abrasive texture, and there's a sort of awkward maltiness, which I think is coming from the youth of the whiskey. There's a creamy vanilla note. So we get the fading flavours of peat smoke and a sort of hefty malt. in between the radiant heat, which at this strength of 57.8 nearly numbs them out. So I'm going to try a little water in this. I'm going to try about 1 ml. Yeah, what a haze on this one. Quite a Scotch mist. So, yeah, that softens it and expands the whiskey. You get smoked fruits and an edge of soy sauce. We'll try the mouth. And the ABV dies away with water, and that makes room for notes of straw and farmyard, peach jam, a warm berry compote, and a welcome dry spiciness. And water does help to bring out the fruitiness in this dram, with that satisfying smack of smokiness still framing everything. And with water, it becomes a little herbaceous, maybe a little bit of fennel in there, along with the citrus. It's got a lovely complexity. This is a great swimmer. I would suggest adding a bit of water to this. This whiskey is fairly unapologetic, to be honest. But it's not just a peat bomb. It has some personality. It's very enjoyable. I would say it's probably a bit more challenging if you're not a peat lover, but loves Campbelltown. So I'm going to cleanse my palate one more time. Well, it'll be interesting to see how this next one measures up to the last one, because this is the 11th batch. So the last one was the 10th batch. This is the 11th, released later in the year, and immediately I can see it's a bit darker. So Kilkerran heavily peated batch 11, 57.9%. So it's only 0.1% increase in ABV. And this one again is being matured in exactly the same makeup of 90% bourbon and 10% sherry casks. So you can see that that's I should have kept us that bit of the last one to show you the difference in colour, but this one is certainly a little darker. This one is certainly a little darker. Sorry about that. My webcam went off following the glass, so you can see there, and it has nice tears. And it's got Kilkerran all over it, citrus element. Notes of lemon and key lime pie, and toasted rye bread, and that peat smoke. And you get notes of freshly baked shortbread, cream soda, banana loaf, and coconut shavings. There is a very clear peat smoke. But as always, it's not the kind of peat smoke you'd get from peated Isla whiskey. But it's a Kilkerran long grow peat smoke. And the smoky note seems no cold and maybe a little rough. Freshly cut limes, gooseberries, pineapple slices, grapefruit, and it's got a plant-like green aroma. A little herbal, fresh herbs, parsley. And the maritime, you get a little smoked trout, salt and pepper, and grated nutmeg. We'll try them all. And this has a very powerful start. And there's a full load of peat smoke over the tongue. But you get caramel and fudge from the start. And there's pepper, chili flakes, and grated nutmeg, so that's spiciness. And grapefruit, pineapple, and mandarin, quince jelly. It's tart and fruity, and the spices shine through again and again. There is a pronounced dryness gradually spreading through the mouth, and the caramel and fruit fade into the background, and the spices more come into the fore. But there's notes of toasted marshmallows and campfire embers, hints of vanilla and custard, and those creamy vanilla notes carry through the palate. Buttered digestive biscuits and custard creams. And the finish is very spicy, pepper, chili spice, and it's quite dry, medium long finish, licorice, quite intense peat smoke, smoky pineapple slices and grapefruit, mineral, earthy and loamy, and that smokiness carries through to the finish, along with a mineral note. The peat is prominent in the finish, along with hints of gooseberries to round off this dram. I'm going to add about a ml of water. So let's see where we're going with this. And it becomes sweeter. Sweet confection, butterscotch, marshmallow bars, nugget, praline, cookies. And there's a wispy smoke in the background with a touch of medicinal iodine. Some Play-Doh and lemon sweets come out in the aroma. We'll try them out. and salted caramel. It gets much saltier with butter. Creamy wood smoke. And chocolate and caramel nugget. Pistachio cream, hazelnut spread, and candied nuts. And there's hints of a tangy pickled fish in the background and a touch of salt. And there's a bit of mint and pininess and a peppery sensation of peat, but not really any smoke as such. And the finish is very spicy. Caramel, there's a hint of a touch of dry autumn vegetation. So Kilkerran heavily peated batch 11, 57.9%, is a very well made whisky. And you know, Kilkerrans, when they're released, are at a very good price performance ratio. So, you know, overall, I think the Kilkerran16 YO was really very nice whisky. The next one, the 8-year-old Cask strength, was okay, but it's not quite there for me. The two heavily peated, if you're looking for a heavily peated from last year, I would say definitely go for the Kilkerran heavily peated batch 11, which I rate 2 or 3 points ahead of the batch 10. So thanks for listening again, and we'll see you next time.